In the early 1970s, Palitoy created a range of Action Man ceremonial uniforms that are universally regarded by collectors today as the absolute pinnacle of quality produced during this line's impressive 18-year run on toy shop shelves. Initially sold under the banner of famous British regiments, this subset of outfits was rebranded in 1971 as Action Man's famous British uniforms, and the range not only included the highly desirable ceremonial sets, it also featured a number of very popular combat uniforms. This series of outfits firmly cemented Action Man's status as a truly British toy line, and not simply a foreign rebranding of the American G.I. Joe toys upon which they were based. When Action Man was first launched in the UK in 1966, the high-quality figures, clothing and accessories were all licensed copies of Hasbro's popular G.I. Joe line, which had taken US toy stores by storm just 2 years prior. This theme of rebranding the American toy products for the UK market continued throughout the following year. Yet in 1968 the first examples of Palitoy's British influence began to emerge, with the introduction of Action Man sportsman sets and the Red Devil parachutist, with these offerings all being developed in-house at Palitoy's headquarters, based in Colville, Leicestershire, England. In 1969 more British designed Action Man sets were developed for the line, and these included a Jungle Explorer, a Polar Explorer and a Mountaineer, with 2 of the 3 outfits proudly displaying the Union Jack flags on their anoraks. These outfits proved that Palitoy could design toys that were just as good as anything being developed by Hasbro. That was until 1970, when Palitoy left their American counterparts in the dust, as they proudly labelled the Action Man brand with a metaphorical Made in Britain stamp. At this time, Hasbro's G.I. Joe was shifting away from their exceptional military-themed offerings of the 1960s and into the inferior age of the adventure team, while Palitoy began pushing the boundaries of accuracy, quality and ambition with Action Man's famous British uniforms.
Come with me, toy fans.
In 1970, the average house price in Britain reached £5,000. The Beatles split up, and floating rigs began drilling for oil in North Sea waters. As the swinging 60s were left behind, this new decade would become one marred by industrial action and declining domestic productivity. Yet one British company managed to buck this trend: the Leicestershire-based toy manufacturer, Palitoy. For Britain's best toy maker, it was a time of immense innovation, with the figure central to their flagship boys brand Action Man being adorned with realistic hair that was developed through the use of electrostatic flocking techniques. While this exciting new innovation to the figure is certainly significant, the year 1970 is the most important period in Action Man's history for another reason, and that's due to the introduction of the famous British uniforms range. These scaled down military outfits are supremely accurate to the uniforms worn by the real soldiers serving in the British Army, and they were all produced with the assistance of the regiments concerned. Today most of these sets are very challenging to find because of the inclusion of numerous very fragile accessories.
Look at the marketing target group, if you like. When I first came in, it was probably 4 to 12. And if you look at it now, if there was a market for it now, it would probably be 3 to 6.
The Action Man ceremonial uniforms certainly weren't designed to be played with by very young children, but they were ideally suited to slightly older British boys in the 9 to 12 year age bracket.
The uniforms, they were, as you said, they were ceremonials. They were things that you could be proud of. I mean, they weren't necessarily uniforms that you could go out into the garden and scribble around and throw bricks at him and things like that. There were other outfits for that, but as something to just put in your bedroom and stand up and be proud of, they were the outfits.
Action Man's famous British uniforms are easily identifiable due to the Union Jack that is proudly incorporated into the packaging designs, and each one of these sets features some magnificent artwork on the side panels. Every piece of art here was hand illustrated, and this type of bespoke quality on toy packaging is a lost art that just doesn't exist anymore. The first of the famous British uniforms to be released in 1970 were the Grenadier Guard, the Parachute Regiment and the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders.
New Action Man Soldier, now with lifelike hair. famous British uniforms for you to collect. Authentic in every detail. And talking commander too.
Enemy aircraft. Action stations.
Here they come. Action Man Red Devils over the dropping zone with parachutes that really work. It's all action with the new Action Man.
The Grenadier Guards is the most senior infantry regiment of the British Army, being at the top of the infantry order of precedence, and the unit can trace its lineage all the way back to 1656. The Action Man Grenadier Guard features a stunning uniform, the likes of which is often seen guarding Buckingham Palace in London. Here Action Man is dressed in a tailored tunic that is adorned with ceremonial buttons, piping and other embellishments. This guardsman also wears the regiment's iconic bearskin cap complete with gold chin strap, and the boots have real laces. His miniaturised white parade belt has the badge of the Grenadier Guards embossed on the buckle, and this guardsman is armed with an SLR rifle and a bayonet. The bayonet can be attached to the barrel of the rifle or stowed in its scabbard, which is carried on the belt with the use of a piece of equipment called a frog, and Palitoy recreated this accessory and the belt by using a white vinyl material. While many of Action Man's ceremonial uniforms came and went from the line in just a few short years, the Grenadier Guard became a mainstay, and it wasn't dropped from the Action Man range until 1982.
When we came out the Grenadier Guard, and it was selling pretty well. All the other regiments wanted one. They started to come. So the Argyll and Southern Highlanders contacted the company. Bill went up to Stirling Castle, which is the regimental museum, and he came back with a full regalia, the kilt, the sporran, the spats and everything.
Bagpipe.
The bagpipes. I don't think he came back with the bagpipes. That would have been a good one, the bagpipes. Yeah, but he came back with all the kit. But he came into the office dressed in it the next day. Dressed in the kilt and everything.
The original Thin Red Line. This title was bestowed upon the Argylls following the action at Balaclava in 1854, in which this single battalion stood alone between the undefended British base at Balaclava and 4 squadrons of charging Russian cavalry. The Action Man Argyll and Sutherland Highlander wears an intricately detailed tunic and tartan kilt, along with colourful socks and white spats, a sporran complete with 3 white tassels, and the Glengarry cap complete with regimental cap badge. Just like the Grenadier Guard, this soldier is armed with an SLR and a bayonet, but it should be noted that the frog used here is unique to this set and is manufactured using a flexible PVC material, which differs greatly from the vinyl one issued to the Grenadier.
Under the recent government defence cuts, one of the kilted Highland regiments must go. The Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders are determined that it will not be them.
The Argyll and Sutherland Highlander was discharged from the Action Man ranks after only 3 years, and due to this limited period of service, the Argyll can be extremely challenging to find complete today, with the bespoke bayonet frog being the most commonly lost piece. In fact, this uniform is so hard to find complete that I actually consider this to be the rarest of all the Action Man ceremonial sets. The Paras are the elite airborne infantry regiment of the British Army, and the unit was first formed during the Second World War, in June of 1940. The men of the Parachute Regiment have a reputation as the most fearsome soldiers in the British Army, making their uniform an ideal addition to the Action Man range. Because I was born in the late 1970s, I didn't start playing with Action Man until around 1981 or 1982. So when I first saw the Action Man Parachute Regiment uniform, it seemed somewhat old-fashioned to me. Yet at the time of its release, this set was notable for being the first modern British combat uniform to appear in the line. Before 1970, the vast majority of the military outfits issued to Action Man were based on World War II uniforms. Yet when Palitoy developed the Parachute Regiment ensemble, Chief toy designer Bob Breakin visited the unit and captured numerous photographs of their uniforms and gear, in an effort to get all of the modern equipment details as accurate as possible. The Action Man Para is dressed in green trousers and a zip-up camouflage smock that features real pockets, and the insignia of the British Airborne Forces is worn on the left sleeve. This soldier has also been issued with boots that have real laces, and he wears a pair of puttees, which are cloth bands that wrap around the ankle, providing support and protection to the joint. This action man also wears the famous maroon beret, and the earliest examples of this toy's headdress were produced from cloth, with the parachute regiment badge being manufactured from either fabric or metal, while later examples of the action man para switched out the cloth beret for one produced in PVC rubber. Everything I have covered so far is accurate to the real parachute regiment uniforms of the time. However, some of the equipment used here is incorrect, and this was a rare misstep for Palitoy. While the SLR was the primary weapon system employed by Britain's airborne forces in 1970, this figure has also been given the same Colt 45 pistol that came with Action Man's early American outfits, and this sidearm has never been issued to British Army soldiers. The ammunition pouches attached to the web belt are also incorrect, as these are designed to carry M1 Garand ammo, as opposed to SLR magazines. Now, I don't personally believe that Palitoy's designers simply dropped the ball here, as I'm sure that they were aware that these accessories were inaccurate. But because these pouches were first issued to Action Man's 1960 US soldier sets, along with the Colt 45, I believe it is far more likely that they were forced to sacrifice a few elements of accuracy by reusing existing parts, in order to create the uniform within their budget constraints. It should also be noted that even though this uniform comes with a bayonet and scabbard, it does not include a frog to carry the bayonet, so you have to simply tuck it into the belt instead. In the early 1970s, Palitoy created a parachute equipment set that was designed to complement the parachute regiment uniform. This offering gave children the opportunity to deck out their Action Man para with a real working parachute that could be attached to the figure with the use of a fabric harness. The parachute equipment set also included a pair of goggles and an accurately sculpted paratrooper shock helmet. As you can see in Bob Breakin's original photographs, British paras jump out of planes with reserve parachutes strapped to their chests. And even though this set did not come with a reserve chute, you could borrow this piece of equipment from the Action Man Red Devil in order to create a more accurate look. Speaking of the Red Devils, these skydivers are all serving members of the British Army's Parachute Regiment, but collectors do not consider the Red Devil to be a part of the famous British uniforms line, because the outfit was released 2 years before this range was launched, and as such, the famous British uniforms branding was never printed on any of the Red Devil packaging examples. Included with the Action Man's Quartermaster Store's uniform was a jungle camouflage jacket and trousers, and while these aren't part of the famous British uniforms range, the camo pattern is so similar to the Parachute Regiment smock that you can use this outfit to give your Action Man para a different look for jungle operations, adding some very welcome variety to your Parachute Regiment display. The Action Man Parachute Regiment is also notable for the almost countless variations that were produced across the years, which not only included the different types of material used to produce the berets, but different coloured scarves and puttees, and rifles that were issued with slings manufactured from either green elastic or black rubber. The Parachute Regiment would go on to become the longest serving famous British uniform in the Action Man range, as unlike the Grenadier Guard, it was never dropped from the line, and Palitoy only stopped making the set when they finally ceased production on Action Man in 1985. The Parachute Regiment did however get a drastic makeover in 1980, when the zipper on the smock was swapped out for snap-together buttons and the old fabric belt was discarded in favour of new injection moulded flexible PVC webbing. And this is the most visually distinct example of all the Action Man variations. These alterations also make the late issue para the most accurate, with Palitoy correcting all of the previously mentioned inaccuracies. The first 3 British uniforms designed by Palitoy were a massive success for the company because they inspired a sense of national pride, and boys all across the country wanted to get their hands on them. Not wanting to rest on their laurels, Palitoy added 5 more famous British uniforms to the range in 1971, as well as a Royal Navy sailor, and you could easily be forgiven for believing that this is another famous British uniform. Yet this outfit was sold as a dress box figure, and like the Red Devil that came before, collectors do not consider the sailor to be part of the famous British uniforms line because the box was never branded as such.
As a Royal Marines commando, you're where the action is. You live with men worth the name Royal Marines. If you'd like to join them, visit your Royal Navy Careers Office or cut the commando coupon in your newspaper.
When the Royal Marine Commandos enlisted into the ranks of Action Man's famous British uniforms, Palitoy produced not one, but 3 different outfits, including the Dress Marine, the Royal Marines Combat, and the Royal Marines Mountain and Arctic uniform. The ceremonial Dress Marine is another stunningly tailored uniform, and here Action Man wears the distinctive parade cap with the badge of the Royal Marine Commandos worn front and centre. This outfit also features a beautifully detailed belt buckle, but unlike the ceremonial uniforms that came before it, this belt was manufactured out of fabric, while the bayonet frog was produced using PVC. Collectors should also note that this frog is unique to the Dress Marine, and is not the same as the one that was issued to the Argyll and Sutherland Highlander.
And then it's over. The longest and toughest basic training in any service culminates in the King's Squad passing out parade. And now they're also entitled to wear the green beret of the Royal Marines Commandos.
The Royal Marines combat uniform includes a combat jacket and trousers, a scarf, boots and puttees, and a soft fabric green beret complete with badge. The combat marine is armed with a bayonet and a Sterling submachine gun that comes with a removable magazine. And for this uniform, Palitoy designed a large cloth pouch that can be attached to the web belt. The Combat Marine is also the perfect outfit to use with the Action Man Assault Craft, which was another product to be released in 1971. Rounding out this trio of bootnecks is the Mountain and Arctic uniform. Britain's Royal Marine Commandos are experts in cold weather warfare, with all units regularly training in Arctic Norway. This Action Man uniform comes with a white jacket and trousers that are designed to be worn over the top of the Marines' battle dress. To allow the commandos to travel across the snow-covered environment, they are also equipped with skis and ski poles, and Palitoy repurposed these items from the Action Man Ski Patrol set that was released back in 1966, but there are some differences between these accessories. The skis from the 1960s set have springs that cross over the boot diagonally and bind them to the ski, whereas the later issue Mountain and Arctic ski has a single spring that loops over the top of the boot. Both sets of ski poles also come from the same tooling mould, but the 60s poles have black painted handles with red straps, while the Royal Marine versions are all white, aside from a lick of silver paint that has been applied to the tip of the poles. The Royal Marines Mountain and Arctic comes with the now common SLR rifle and bayonet. However, for this outfit they have been produced in white plastic to camouflage them against the snow. Another accessory that was changed to white and issued to this set is the cloth pouch that came with the Royal Marines combat uniform, although this time around 2 pouches were issued instead of 1. The Mountain and Arctic uniform was a really fun and very popular set, although I always thought it should have come with a rucksack, and if you want to add one, I recommend using the hard plastic backpack that came with the Secret Mission to Dragon Island outfit that was released in 1976. Despite the public prominence of the Royal Marine Commandos, the Dress Marine and the Combat Marine were both dropped from the line after only 2 years of service. Yet due to the popularity of the Royal Marines Mountain and Arctic uniform, it remained in the line right up until Palitoy ceased production of Action Man in 1985. And in 1980 this outfit received the same treatment as the Parachute Regiment, when it was reissued with a newly designed webbing system. After being AWOL for 8 years, the Royal Marines Combat finally re-enlisted into service in 1980 and was issued with a brand new uniform that now sported a colourful camouflage pattern. This outfit came with a new PVC beret and the same 58 pattern webbing system that was given to the late issue Action Man Para. However, since this set uses no parts from the original Royal Marines Combat uniform, aside from the boots, I don't consider it to be a variation, and I have always treated it as a completely different Action Man set that is definitely not a part of the famous British uniforms range. For this edition of the Commando, Palitoy designer Greg Hughes even modelled an all-new version of the Royal Marine cap badge, and shown here is that original sculpture that I found in the archive room of the V&A Museum of Childhood in London back in 2011, when I was researching the Story of Action Man documentary feature film.
When we came to the ceremonials, you got the Grenadier and then the Argyll. Of course, all the other regiments are, this is great, little miniature versions of us, So the Blues and Royals and the Lifeguards approached Bill. So Bill and I went down to the Household Cavalry barracks down in London, and entertained by the commander-in-chief down there in the officers' mess. We were taken all around. We were taken into the stables to see the horses. They gave us all the kit, and I photographed it all and took stuff back, helmet back, so we could copy that and produce their uniforms.
Today it's the lifeguards' turn, and they're preparing to relieve their comrades of the Blues on duty 2 miles away near Trafalgar Square.
The Lifeguards is the most senior regiment of the British Army and part of the Household Cavalry, which also includes the Blues and Royals. These are two of the most ornate and spectacular Action Man uniforms ever created, and while the uniforms were sold in a carded tray-style package, just like all the previously released famous British uniforms, Palitoy also offered these sets as complete dressed figures that were packaged for collectors in display window boxes, and this is the first time that the company ever sold Action Man figures in this fashion. Aside from the colour differences between the tunics and the helmet plumes, these two uniforms are almost identical, and they feature tall riding boots with chrome spurs, a shoulder belt with cartouche, and a cavalry sword and scabbard that hangs from Action Man's authentically detailed parade belt. The only other notable difference between these two uniforms is that the Blues and Royals tunic has the regiment's Waterloo badge attached to the shoulder of the left sleeve, a decoration that was not issued to the Lifeguard.
Every time we did one of these ceremonial uniforms, we presented them all with one. And I can imagine that must be still down there in that officer's mess somewhere. It'd be interesting to know. So that's how it happened, you know.
Of course, with these two soldiers being members of the Household Cavalry, they look quite lonesome without horses to ride. So Palitoy created one for Action Man, which was released in 1972. And this toy was designed by Bill Pugh, Palitoy's Director of Design Research and Development. Because
we did the Lifeguards and the Blues and Royals, you had to have a horse. So Bill said to Stuart, because Stuart used to have all this clay for sculpting the dolls' heads and things, Stuart, give me a load of clay. He took it home over the weekend. He came back a few days later with a sculpted horse. I mean, he wasn't just talented in thinking up ideas, he was a great sculptor as well.
The Action Man horse was initially made available in two different packages. The first offering was sold in a large box with some stunning artwork, and the horse came complete with a full dress parade saddle and bridle, while the second box featured alternate artwork, where the horse and saddle came packed in with a complete Action Man Lifeguard uniform. This version of the Lifeguard was also the first time that the set included the spectacular breastplate armour accessories that are known as cuirasses.
It looks like fancy dress. Scarlet tunic, white buckskin breeches and black boots, cuirasses.
The chrome armour panels with gold shoulder straps are worn by both the Lifeguards and the Blues and Royals, although the Blues were never sold complete with this accessory set. The breastplates came included with the Lifeguard uniform in both the deluxe box horse set and in a new solid box dress figure offering, but the Blues and Royals weren't afforded this treatment. Hence the reason why Palitoy made sure to make the breastplate accessories available separately, and these were sold on either a small cardback or in the full parade accoutrement set that also included the parade saddle and harness for the horse. If you're wondering why Palitoy would bother to sell the saddle and bridle separately, well, it's because the company reissued the Action Man horse in 1974 with saddle only, and it was sold without any of the dress parade regalia. The addition of the breastplate armour takes these already stunning figures and turns them into the most gloriously eye-catching uniforms in the entire Action Man range. It should also be noted that household cavalry troops typically wear cuirasses when on horseback, so for a more accurate display, the dismounted troops should be dressed in tunics only and not with breastplates.
And of course the ceremonials, the Blues and Royals, they really sold back to the Americans. They loved them.
Bill Pugh did a wonderful job of sculpting this horse, and the toy features a realistic tail and mane. While you could criticise the lack of articulation here, we've already established the fact that these sets were intended for display purposes. And I'm very happy that I never have to worry about my ceremonial troops falling off the display shelf due to weak knees on the horse. In point of fact, Action Man's ceremonial uniforms were so well suited to the role of display case darlings that one company even used them to help promote the sale of shop window turntables.
Action Man in the full-dress uniform of the 1721st Lancers. And in the Lifeguards, astride the magnificent new horse you can now get for Action Man. And here comes today's cavalry, the new Scorpion tank, taking the rough with the smooth. A staff officer and military policeman watch it move up in support of the machine gun posts. Action Man, on parade for your inspection now.
Joining the Action Man horse in 1972 were 3 all-new famous British uniforms, including the 17th 21st Lancers, the British Army officer, and the Royal Military Police uniform.
The modern army has a proud heritage, and some combat troops take part in ceremonies that recall the traditions of the past. But they're fighting soldiers as well.
The 17th 21st Lancer is another beautifully elaborate Action Man uniform that consists of a black and white tunic, riding boots and spurs, and a plumed helmet. The Lancer also carries a crossbelt and cartouche box, but these accessories differ from the ones issued to the Lifeguards and the Blues and Royals, with the Lancer's cartouche featuring the regiment's famous Death or Glory unit badge. Many parts of this set are fragile and hard to find, yet none more so than the 2-piece lance that is used to carry the regimental pennant and skull and crossbones flag, and it has a white PVC strap attached to the connection point. Of course, with the Lancers being cavalrymen, they are also ideally suited to ride upon the Action Man horse. As with all the famous British uniforms released, the 17th 21st Lancers regalia was sold in 1972 as the uniform only on carded tray packaging, as well as in the dressed figure display window box format, before Palitoy switched to the solid box in 1973, and the company described this packaging style in their trade catalogue as attractive pilfer-proof boxes. While this may be the only ceremonial version of the 17th 21st Lancers to appear in the Action Man range, the unit was still well represented throughout the rest of the line. And that's because multiple iterations of the Action Man Talking Commander wore the regiment's Death or Glory badge on the officer's cap, right up until it was changed to the badge of the Special Air Service in 1983.
There are those who believe that the life of an officer in the British Army goes something like this.
Doing anything this weekend? Yeah, Scotland. Scottish shooting. If it wasn't for this ghastly exercise, one could have caught an earlier train. Nuisance.
Even though the British Army officer uniform isn't exactly ceremonial attire, the ensemble still makes Action Man look very smart, and it came complete with a shirt and tie that was worn underneath the jacket. Included with this uniform is a sticker sheet, featuring a variety of different rank slides that can be attached to the jacket's epaulets. However, because these are paper stickers, they are almost impossible to find today, unless you crack open a sealed example. Aside from the rank stickers, the baton is the other most frequently lost piece from this set, and it is also challenging to find the Sam Brown belt in good condition, given its complex design that features multiple buttons and buckles. This belt takes its name from General Sir Samuel James Brown, who was a British Indian Army officer who lost his left arm to a sword cut during the Sepoy Rebellion. Because the lack of a left hand to steady his scabbard made it difficult for him to draw his sword, Brown devised a supplementary belt that hooked into the waist belt with D-rings and went over his right shoulder to steady the scabbard. This design worked so well that other officers began wearing a similar rig, and it eventually became part of the standard issue British Army officer uniform.
The patrols line up for briefing. After inspection, the orderly sergeant will give the command, produce appointments, and then examine and initial AB 466 notebooks.
The Action Man Royal Military Policeman wears a uniform similar to the British Army officer, with regimental badges worn on either side of the collar. This MP is armed with a Sterling submachine gun and a truncheon, and he wears the military police cap on his head, with a red armband being worn around the right sleeve. This famous British uniform also came with sergeant stripe stickers, and just like the ones that came with the British Army officer, they are beyond rare. Also printed on the back of the packaging for the Royal Military Police are a number of army signs that could be cut out and used in your Action Man display, but these don't turn up very often either.
The control of any city is mapped out in the duty room. A radio call or the ring of a telephone can trigger off a chain reaction of events to meet a variety of situations. The radio network is tuned to alertness. Border patrols keep a round-the-clock watch along the frontiers.
In fact, once I went to Nuremberg, got stopped at the border guard, and the chap couldn't speak any English, and the only way we could get through was to give him a couple of action men.
Bit of bribery on the border.
We got the impression, oh, then he only waved it on then.
That's its use as action man.
At some point in the early 1970s, Palitoy began developing a 7th ceremonial uniform for Action Man, but sadly, this outfit never made it to retail.
Bill came along and said, we need to do the hussar, that's a fantastic outfit. All this braiding that comes down his jacket, sort of yellow braiding, looks like scrambled egg that's been piped on. So he gave us the task to do that. It was a sort of task that the designers and the dress designers sort of working along together. Val tried sort of sewing it on. It took ages, to sew this braiding on. It wouldn't have been economically possible to do it. So we thought, can we do it a different way? Can we injection mould this braiding, this yellow braiding, onto the material? And we experimented for a long while doing that, but it just didn't come off. So we gave it up as a bit of a bad job.
While Palitoy continued to sell Action Man's famous British uniforms over the next few years, no new outfits were added to this range from 1973 to 1975. Then in 1976, seemingly out of nowhere, another uniform was released. With the Royal Air Force, we saw the return of the signature Union Jack theme cardback, and this outfit consists of boots and trousers, a greatcoat and a forage cap. A sweater and stable belt are worn underneath the greatcoat, and Palitoy described this uniform as the working dress of the Royal Air Force. Even though I like the design of the forage cap, this is otherwise the most underwhelming of the famous British uniforms, because there isn't a lot for a child to do with this set. So to give the outfit a little more play value, I'd suggest either adding the workshop accessories toolbox, or having this Action Man operate the working searchlight. He also looks terrific when displayed with the Battle of Britain pilot, but that uniform was not released until 1979. While the Royal Air Force would be the final Action Man product to carry the famous British uniforms branding, a few other outfits such as the Tank Commander and Dispatch Rider were featured in the famous British uniform section of some later Palitoy trade catalogues. Yet these outfits are not officially a part of this legendary Action Man subgroup. The Action Man toy line would continue to be sold for another 8 years after the release of the Royal Air Force, yet we would never again see the return of the Union Jack packaging that was synonymous with the famous British uniforms range. In the intervening years, Action Man ventured into the Wild West, and he took up a career in the emergency services. But his military-themed outfits remained the most popular, and Palitoy took one final stab at a ceremonial uniform in 1979, with the introduction of the Royal Hussar.
I think it came off those, do we see one of Dave Barnacle's drawings earlier on, where it was on that list of characters, different uniforms, and that was on there, and I think perhaps marketing said, oh, we'll have another go at a ceremonial, that's the one we'll go for. It's been so successful in the past, let's put another one in.
This is the only ceremonial uniform to be created during the Eagle Eye era, when the Action Man figure was given a new moving eyes play feature. And the outfit features a lavishly decorated crossbelt and cartouche, and a wonderfully tailored tunic. While I have certainly touched on a lot of uniforms in this video that aren't officially a part of the famous British uniforms range, I'm sure you can excuse the inclusion of the Royal Hussar, because he just fits in so perfectly with Action Man's other ceremonial uniforms.
Well, this is what we used to do at the toy fairs, didn't we, Brian?
Oh yeah.
We'd invite the regiment to send a couple of guys down, and we did it with the Blues and Royals and the Lifeguards one year when we brought that one out. 2 guys came down. Unfortunately, they got rooked by the salesman and lost all their money on cards. And Bill, the gentleman he was, bailed them out. Of course, we had the Hussars there when we brought the Hussars outfit out, yeah.
As I look back at these toys that were created over 50 years ago, I am still in complete awe at the accomplishment that was achieved by a small British company that operated out of a town that was best known for coal mining. Coalville in Leicestershire is now just as well known, if not more so, as the home of Palitoy, and this company's prestigious reputation owes an insurmountable debt to the iconic products that they developed. Throughout their reign, Palitoy created an almost endless list of legendary toys, But no other triumph in their entire history was as great as Action Man's famous British uniforms. Britain's favourite boys' toy served under Palitoy's stewardship for 18 years, and collectors today have separated this career into 3 distinct periods, bookended by the painted hair era of the 1960s and the eagle-eye era of the late 70s and early 80s. Both of these periods take their names from the style of figures being sold at the time, while the period in the middle, from 1970 to 1977, is universally known as Action Man's Golden Era. This is because the quality of the uniforms being produced at that time was so magnificent that it would be a disservice to the creative genius of Palitoy's designers to call the age anything but. It was a time when everything Palitoy touched turned to gold.
In your wildest dreams would you think that after this finishes there's going to be people out there collecting this sort of thing?
It's always seemed worthwhile because when you set them up in windows or where you set them up, people's faces lit up when they saw them. Got great enjoyment from it.
It sort of highlighted my life really, I suppose.
The Action Man famous British uniforms range was far more than a simple series of play accessories. It was a superbly executed, highly accurate and intricately detailed collection of scale uniforms that represented the best the country had to offer. And 50 years on, they remain the most impressive and elegant toys the world has ever known.